Hello everyone, I'm your host Amartya Singh, the co-founder and CEO of Inflow, a product built by and for modern finance teams. Welcome to the 12th episode of Inside the CFO podcast, where we explore the journeys of finance leaders, discuss the challenges that they have overcome, and we also gain insights into their views on the future of finance. Today, we are honored to have Scott with us to talk about the right financial transformation by a CFO. Scott is the CFO and Corporate Secretary of Plurilock, a publicly listed cybersecurity firm. With over 2 decades of experience, he has played transformative roles across sectors, including cybersecurity, gaming, energy, and technology. Known for his ability to lead organizations through complex restructuring and M&A, Scott has constantly delivered results, be it driving $2 million in cost savings in under 90 days or implementing shared service strategies across global teams. So I have had multiple great conversations with Scott. So I thought that it's a great vehicle for us to talk about his incredible journey. So welcome, Scott. How are you, and how is your day looking like?
Oh, I'm doing great. We're just starting here. I think you're just finishing. So lovely to kind of get both ends of the day here.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So there's some 4, 5 pointers that we are going to talk about today. So let's kickstart it from an introduction perspective. Love to know how you have gone through your career journey. Starting from an accountant to a CFO, you have seen a lot of challenges, or how has it been?
Yeah. So I think, I went to school. I started out probably like most people did. You kind of have two choices. You can go be an auditor, or you can go directly into industry. I went directly into industry. Lucky enough to work for a company called Schneider Electric that allowed me to see pretty much every facet of finance in a large organization. It took me, to two countries because I was just a cornbread guy from Illinois and ended up somehow in Canada by way of France, and it was a good journey. Now, from the accounting side along the way, I think, it was very important to touch upon every aspect. So you have, the basic accounting, you have consolidations, I think accounting and financial statement prep, you have FP&A, and you have business partnering. And when you have the opportunity to see all of those, it gives you a pretty well-rounded picture of the financial part of the business. Business partnering is actually probably the most important because that's when you really understand what your actual business does. I know plenty of accountants have had this question of like, well, hey, what's the strategy behind it? And they're like, I don't know, I just do the numbers. You really need to get in, take that opportunity when you can and get into whatever business you're doing, whether you're making stuff or you're doing services or, whatever else your business may do. And that's been, an integral part of my journey. And I think it's really helped me learn multitudes of businesses.
Got it. I mean, great pointer about how you have led across the different roles, the importance of strategy and importance of working with teams and multiple other aspects. One interesting aspect you mentioned about Schneider Electric. I mean, one personal connect that I have with Schneider Electric.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had a brief consulting stint with KPMG, right?
Right.
So one of our projects, interestingly, was for Schneider Electric, where
Nice.
where Schneider Electric was making an acquisition, and we had to get that processes aligned between the company that was being acquired and setting all the processes,
Mm.
technology, everything aligned at Schneider. So it's very interesting. The world is a small place, I believe.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because I always, I used to say, I think Schneider's done a good job over the last,
Yeah,
10 years or more branding themselves, but they used to be
yeah,
I had the airport test. If you
yeah,
could talk to a random person in the airport and they knew Schneider, and it was weird because they're like the largest company. That was the biggest secret. It was kind of funny, but I'm glad they've expanded quite a lot. And they're a
yeah.
company that grows by acquisition. So I think that also adds a lot of complexity. Early in your career is actually painful. It can teach you how things work and how things don't work, and
Right.
what's the right path to get a good financial process going.
Let's take it up a notch and get into a little bit more on the transformation side. I know
Mm.
we have had some great conversations on the transformation projects that you have led. I mean, what are the 2, 3 biggest transformation projects that you led as a finance leader, and how did you go about it? What were the challenges, and what are the outcomes that you were targeting from those finance transformation
Yeah,
projects?
the probably one of the largest ones here was here at Plurilock, and really coming in, and we've done a pretty hard pivot into a service line of business using the cybersecurity expertise that we have in-house from more of a software technology company. And that was quite purely because the market told us, hey, like we need you guys to make money, but also we had this really good confluence of great advisors that had a good set of talent that we could tap upon, that we could deliver for customers. And that was, I would say, a huge challenge. Like Plurilock grew by acquisition, so we harmonized a lot of the back office, took out a lot of cost, offshored roles and made sure that we had a good cost structure. And that was probably the largest, project in terms of, ability and just the sweat and tears. One of the ones that I like to talk about, even though it's probably it's not as good, but I like this story because it tells me, and it's one where really at any level you can lead transformation. So back in the good old days when I was working in the US, I just transitioned to an FP&A role, and the FP&A team had a horrible time, getting the forecast together, submitting the forecast to parent, and then, hopefully it's right. So, and they were up till, 2, 3 in the morning, like doing these submissions kind of manually and whatnot. And, luckily enough, I had the skills of how to submit, properly in the system and upload. And maybe I'm a little bit more technical than I should be even today. And so really looking at that entire process. So when you look at this, forecast, and I think it was about a $4 billion US entity, you have to look, start to finish, like who's giving you what inputs, how are those inputs getting put in, how are they getting checked? Because unfortunately, people will put in inputs and then be like, oh no, that wasn't the right number. And you're like, okay, so what's the right number, please? And then making sure that that gets submitted in a timely manner. And basically we looked through the whole process and said, okay, where can we make improvements? And then set deadlines of like, okay, if your number's in this, and I remember having strong conversations with people that they wanted to change after they submitted. And I said, too bad, better luck next time. The advantage of a forecast is you'll get to do it again in a quarter. Right. And then, move forward and get that submitted kind of in a more like technological way. I think they were like hard keying it before and just using the loading process. But the reason why I say that is, I was pretty young in my career, and there was still a lot of skills that I could take together and basically put it forward to make a process. And that was really a transformation, because if you think we had this horrible forecast process and now, okay, it works. And I remember, we were done with it. Like they were like, holy crap, we're expecting to stay till like 2 or 3 in the morning. And it was like noon, and we looked at each other and we were done, and we're like, all right, let's go get lunch. Like you can make your life better. I think the process was better. I think everybody was happier with the results. All of the people, because, we were touching probably, 20 people that had to submit too. And the reason why I like that type of transformation is it's something that you could do at a junior level. Like even if you make your accounting reconciliation process better, you can call that a transformation, all the way up to some big grand scale. I think we usually think of like, oh, let's put in a new system and, like do a new process, and we're going to completely reinvent our reporting. Sometimes these little transformations, I think, are the ones that, you can do more often and get, compounding results over time.
Got it. So I think there were a couple of very interesting points you mentioned. One is having transformations does not need to be a big turnkey transformation. It can be small level of smaller transformations which are incremental and which over a point of time give massive results. And that was an example of the forecasting, transformation, or the kind of implementation that you did on the forecasting side. And also I love the other transformation that you mentioned about, in terms of what you did at Plurilock. One question here, when you went ahead with the transformation at Plurilock, right? And obviously there are so many stakeholders while taking somebody with a transformation. There is the CEO, of course, who needs to be, you need to get them on your side of the table to go with transformation. There's the tech team, there might be certain changes in the technology that you are using. And then obviously operations and others. How do you manage to, how do you go about convincing them? Or is it like a driven transformation? Or is it like everybody comes together and decided on the transformation? Or how did you go about convincing or getting them on board?
Different, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on who you work with and their biases and the way that they work better. I would say Plurilock is a more small, scrappy type company, and we're entrepreneurial. We're very into hardworking and getting things done. So like we have a culture of like, let's get it done. Let's figure out how we can do it. So it was actually like, I would say probably one of the easier sells. We also knew like, hey, we can do this and it's going to be a good direction for the company. So when you have an easy sell, that to me, that's the hardest part of selling it. The execution is, making sure you just do it. And it could be that simple, but like if you have a decent plan and you just start working on the plan, you'll get it done. Where I think transformations go wonky is when you have a culture that maybe you need to bring people along and it's a little bit slower and it's larger, or where, not everybody's invested in the new tool. and there's sometimes you have to, one, you have to talk to everybody and get them on board, and two, the reality of businesses today is that your business that you work for is going to change.
Right.
Because if it doesn't change, it's probably going to miss some sort of boat. We have a lot of rapid technology change that we've seen in the last, even 10 years that we're still trying to figure out, and it's going to change things. We don't know how it's going to change things, but it's going to change. And so if you're not learning new skills and adapting, you're not going to be part of your environment anymore, or you're going to have to find something else to do.
Right.
There's, I think at least in the Western world, there was this mythical, you can go get a decent factory job, and that's been long dead. And even like, oh, I could be an accountant and kind of work my way up. And that's also, there's a lot more to that. You have
Yeah.
to be increasing your skills, and that will be a part of, again, when we think of transformation, like we're going to be constantly transforming. That's almost like a skill that you're going to just need to bring of like, okay, there's going to be a new process because my old one's going to be obsolete. How do I update it? Or how am I continually updating my processes?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like transformation is the new constant in CFO's life.
It is. And here's a good marker. You're due for a transformation when you see like Excel 97 colors. Like,
well said.
yeah. So but if something, generally you're going to say something's going to feel clunky or off, or just you go into your system and it looks like, about 2005, you're like, okay, it's probably something's not,
Right.
optimally running here. That may be not the best part to go through. It could be, something in your operations. It could be something else. But
Right.
these are hints that the universe is giving you.
So thanks to Scott for answering the question, and great answer for the transformation. I think the biggest thing over here is that transformation does not need to be a massive transformation. It can be small pieces of transformation which actually leads to something bigger one, or these small ones are actually themselves leading on to something big. So great answer. Loved your answer on the transformation projects. Let's move on to the next question. You have worked across diverse sectors. We were talking about, the cybersecurity side, gaming, energy, technology. You worked on so many, diverse sectors. Obviously, it's not easy to work across these different segments. There are different learnings, there are different processes, macros are different, the demand supply cycle is different, everything is a lot different. Although there might be something basic, fundamental applications which are there, but I know it must not have been easy. How did you go about it? It's interesting, but it's challenging as well in the same time. How did you go about, and did it help you to work across these sectors? Did it give you some skills that really differentiates you from others?
I think so. What I would say is, anytime you can learn a new skill, do it, because you're adding to your skills stack, and the more skills that you can stack in a row makes you kind of more of a unique duck, and that you're more able to do different things. I would say don't be afraid of jumping into industries, especially in finance. I think the skills that you have in finance are pretty universal. They're easily transferable. It's one of the, I think, the lucky things that you can stumble into when you do accounting and finance. There's usually one or two different things you need to learn on the accounting side, and then the financial side is, how does this business model work? And really that's the two things I would look at immediately is like, okay, is there any special accounting in this type of field? For example, like I've done cannabis, you have to learn biological assets. It's IFRS's answer for agriculture. It's kind of weird. That's all I'll say about it now. But outside of that, then you're looking at, that business was really three businesses. It was a retail business, it was a manufacturer, and it was a farm. And you have to look at like, what does each stage of that business look like in a financial and business model? Anything like nuclear energy, a lot of it's a service business, really, when it comes down to it. You're doing really high level services with really smart people. I mean, they are mostly nuclear engineers, and your safety is very important in the nuclear space. That said, it is a service business still, and that is the same as like an HVAC business in terms of like, how do I run this? What do I need to make sure I'm charging my customers? How do I get efficiencies out of my team? So some stuff starts to rhyme, I would say, very, very quickly. And even like in Plurilock, like we run a service business. We also run a resale business. And those two things those are two kind of separate business models, but they feed really well into each other. So what I would give is, in terms of advice, is if you're changing industries, is okay, what's their business model look like? That would be the first thing. Like, how do they make money? And then once you understand how they make money, the accounting kind of falls into place.
God, you put it in a very fundamental way in terms of how do they make money. The business model will define how the accounting runs, how the accounting principles are set, and I think that's brilliant. Great. Thanks for, answering a question with regards to the diverse sector. And I know it must have been interesting as well as challenging as well.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think, one, we talked about Schneider a little earlier, and I would say that start of a career is serendipitous in terms of they actually had, a lot of people may think of them for like one thing, but they have a broad set of products as they've grown through acquisition. So it's all around a theme, but that theme has industrial automation, and it also has like
Right.
what we used to call lovingly called the big gray boxes, which are, what's in your building powering your or allowing your power to be safe. And then you have, like UPSs, which are backing up servers. So those markets all behave differently.
Yeah.
And, that was, I don't know, a mini MBA, if you will, that I was lucky enough to see all of those types of businesses in one shop and in, an environment with other smart people, a lot of good people that work there. So I think,
Right.
take what you get.
Yeah.
One of the best advice I've given, it was more for like whenever you're going and giving a presentation, is just like accept the offer. Like you're going to get something, if
Yeah.
you have technical difficulties on your tool, it's going to happen. Just take it and roll with it and go. Presentation, your PowerPoint doesn't work or something, just keep going. And I think with your career, it can be the same thing. Like, okay, if
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I really want to be at this type of business, you can still target that, but
Yeah.
do what you can where you are. Because the more that
Yeah.
you implement and grow and learn where you are, that's going to
Yeah.
help you build skills to then get to where you want
Right.
to go.
Got it. Great. Lovely answer. Loved it. And let's move to the next time. This is one of my favorite segment in the podcast with regards to the technology in the CFO tech stack. So my
Yeah.
first up question is, CFO tech stack has been evolving ever since, we're talking about the ERPs and then we see a lot of softwares in the entire CFO tech stack. What is
Mhm.
your take? I know you have worked across enterprises, you worked across mid-size, you worked across smaller companies, large companies, and the approach to a technology within the companies also varies. Sometimes there is a tech team which is, there is an internal tech team which drives the technology. That's what drives the ethos, or sometimes the finance team drives the how the product is going to get built out. So I think what I want to know is that how do you see the overall CFO tech stack panning out across your experience, and how have you gone about building technology? How do you see technology panning out over the
Mhm.
next 5-10 years?
So I think it's a big question, but what I would say is if I just
Yeah,
look at like what the technology stack is, it probably depends on your budget, your size of business. The more you can automate and control, I think the better in your tech stack. However, what I would go back and say is there's a lot of tools now.
yeah,
And it's probably more important that you have a company on a single set of tools versus, especially if you grow by acquisition, one company may have a better ERP, but another company has a better procurement process. Like it's
yeah.
actually better to get everybody on the same process first and then move forward as a company. And this is
Got it.
something I've learned, mainly through pain. Pain's a good teacher, but having disparate processes is very difficult on a system. Now, when you get to a certain scale, sometimes you are running massive P&Ls and you're just going to have to live with that kind of system unless you go through, again, a massive transformation. But if I'm talking more on the smaller side, it's pick a tool that works really well at what it does. I think there's some really good offers out there that get you at least 80% of like perfect. But what I will say, and a joke that one of my friends and I have, nobody likes their system. Even if you have a brand new system, it's going to be, very, it's different. So, or you're never going to like be happy with it. No one's complacent. So pick tools that you can harmonize across your organization and get everybody aligned on them. And then also, like, I think what's very important in the tech stack, like people look at the tool and it's nice and shiny, but it's also how you use the tool.
Yeah,
So, a carpenter can buy the best hammer that's out there, but if they don't know how to like hit nails in, it's not going
yeah,
to matter. And
right.
so you need to pick like which ones are we actually going to focus on and use, and what's our use case? Because there's tons of I call them micro tools now.
Mm.
Like this one does AR, this one does account reconciliations. But overall, like how much time does your team have to actually focus on these
Yeah,
things, and what can you
yeah,
get more efficient at? And that's how
right.
I would think of like what do I put into our tech stack? And we're in a
Got it.
great time. I think we're going to be in a golden age of finance tools. It's going to be like, the golden age of television where you had so much good stuff on TV to watch. We're going to have like so many good tools we could potentially implement that we don't know
Yeah,
which ones to do. So my advice would be, where we're going is let's pick a few, implement those and see how they work. And then,
yeah,
move on to better and better things if we can.
Got it. I love that statement, the words that you coined, golden age of finance tools. I think that's very interesting. And that's,
Here,
I think,
I heard it here first, guys.
that's a great thing to say as well. And I believe as a finance leader also, it's very important to be in touch with what finance tools you can use and you what they are capable of, what is possible out of it,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly. It and it's also good to run experiments too, I think, because there's going to be
Yeah,
some tools that seem like a good idea. You run an experiment, and I always think of like what's the total cost, but cost in terms of dollars as well as in terms of money and also time and resources that you're putting into it. There's like the hidden tyranny of salaried employees, which I think there's kind of a an immediate ask that like, oh, let's just ask them to keep doing stuff because I'm not paying them per hour. But you need to think like, well, really, they only have so many hours in the day. So even if I get them being the most productive, and even if I get them working a little bit more, like there's still a maximum amount that these people can manage.
right.
So what are we going to focus on? Focus is, I think, a large part of why jobs get done or not done.
Yeah, yeah, right. Great. And I think apart from that, you also talked about the alignment on implementation of a tool.
Mhm.
Obviously, there is a finance team at the heart of it. Mm, There is a tech team which has a certain level of integration capabilities coming in, and then certain softwares also touch other team. Like for example, you're building an AR tool or you're building a credit tool.
Right.
It impacts the sales teams, and there is an operation aspect of it impacts the operations team. So I think alignment is huge and it's difficult. But
Mhm.
once there is a clear alignment, and alignment is tricky, but once you get it really on the table, what happens is transformation really happens because everybody is on the same page, then everybody works toward it. And I think you also talked about in different words in terms of the intent, in terms of building a
Right.
tool, the focus which you mentioned. If there is an intent and a focus on building the sort of transformation, typically it works. And obviously it is comprised of multiple review cycles. Like you built out something, you review, then you further build it and review, right? I think that's a great approach. One question on the ERPs, right? And
Mhm.
you have worked across different segments. I'm sure you must have worked across SAPs of the world, QuickBooks of the world. You must have worked Oracle, Microsoft, I mean, ERPs. What has been your general experience across the ERPs?
I'll try not to be I'm going to try to be like not agnostic,
Yeah,
or I'm going to try to not single any out. I think there's a
right,
few that are doing really amazing things that people should probably take a look at. Like they may have a
right.
perception of them from 5-10 years ago,
Yeah,
and they've really moved forward. And I think there's a few that are kind of resting on their laurels.
yeah,
What I would look at is how are they pricing this, and
yeah.
how scalable is it, and how easy is it to integrate with my other tools.
Got it.
I would also, say like, I hate to say this, but I think it's true. Does it integrate with Excel? Because I guarantee you every ERP and every company is going to be like, hey, you shouldn't be using Excel anymore. And I've heard this now for like 20 years,
Yeah,
a 20-year plus career. It's just a tool you're going to end up like using whenever you have to like put two systems together. And so can you
yeah,
get your data out of it easy? But also like even can you get your data out of it easy? Because maybe you want to, put it into another tool, or there's going to be an
right,
AI tool. So
right.
some of them are more friendly with that than others. And I would look at, what's the pricing? How is it structured? So if I add a new team member, am I going to get, do I have to pay for like a full license for this whole
Yeah,
ERP when I have somebody that's
right,
just doing like AR, or maybe a
right,
new salesperson that just needs to enter something in the CRM?
right.
Is there going to be a huge, am I going to get tied to it or married to
Yeah,
it? We're entering an age where you don't necessarily need to get married to your ERP unless you're running a huge like
yeah,
manufacturing. And the
right,
days of like the old SAP system, even SAP like has sleeker
right,
models now,
right.
where you're just kind of like like they own you. The joke's like the best way to do an ERP implementation is just to build a whole new brand new company. So I think we're changing, and that model's
Right.
changing. And so I would look for the partners that will allow you to have some flexibility in your business and are also,
Yeah.
improving their tool over time.
Great. I think a lovely answer. Love the answer with regards to the flexibility in terms of the pricing, flexibility in terms of scalability, flexibility in terms of integrating with the current stack. Because, when you are adding another technology, it should not change the way things work. It should not change the good things about your business, right? You should not go and start, something is really going well and to solve something and, you can't impact something that is going really well. So I think these three things are really, really important. And I think I really get your, concerns on the pricing and the scalability.
Mhm.
And especially, I mean, it also is linked with my next question, actually. More and more capabilities finance tech is not migrating, but actually including, artificial intelligence in the way the finance technology is structured. So
Yeah.
what I have also seen is the pricing is changing, scalability is changing, how whether it moves from a license-based pricing to a prompt-based pricing or an application-based pricing. I think that makes it much more flexible. So there is a multiple things, but I'd love to know from you. I mean, how do you see AI in finance evolving, and how do you see the future of AI in finance?
So I mean, the short answer is I'm not really sure. I think the best thing most people can do right now, and I won't take credit for this idea, I stole it from somebody on LinkedIn, was use AI first. So I liked that concept. Used to Google things first. Now it's kind of like go to the AI prompt first. There, I can tell you like one of the uses one of my good friends is using is like he's taking his meeting notes and transcripts and using it to develop processes inside his company. I think
Okay.
I think we don't know exactly where the best use of this is, but it's so broad and at least it's very broad where you can use it
Yeah.
to speed up a few things. I can tell you like I'm in charge of the legal function. Again, we're a small company, so it's maybe a little dangerous. I've only had like two business law courses, but no. Usually finance ends up doing that, right? And when you need to draft some sort of clause, it's very easy to go to AI and just say, okay, give me a non-disparagement clause or give me an indemnification clause, and
Yeah.
you can kind of work from there. So I think there's some of these little speed enhancements, even like creating a job posting, a lot of things you can do faster. So that's why I like the use AI first. I'm also seeing then tools that are using machine learning to help your teams with account reconciliations. I think some of this stuff we're gonna be like, in 10 years from now, be like, oh yeah, that's just of course it looks at like your statements. It's kind of like, of course you can just go on the internet and chat with whoever.
Yeah.
It's not even like a thing.
Right. Right.
Whereas today it's not widely used. And so I
Hmm.
would encourage people like look for these opportunities to, it's not just necessarily AI, but there's just new tools out there you can use. And are these
Right.
tools can these tools help you? I always tell people like, look, try to spend 30 minutes a week at least on like what I call strategy time, which strategy is basically, I would define it as how do you play the game? So how am I doing my work?
Right.
No matter what level you are. Because even if you look at yourself, quick example, I'm going to go on a tangent here. Quick example, like first job that I had in accounting, they were printing things off and manually reconciling intercompany, like crossing lines out on a piece of paper. And it took like 4 hours. And I'm just like, can we just like put this in Excel and sort it and like do it in, probably literally like 5 minutes. And so nobody at that time, I'm not disparaging the people, but nobody kind of took a step back and say like, man, this sucks. Like, is there a better way to do it? So
Right.
if you're spending that time, sometimes it's very hard when you're just trying to get the work done. You
Mhm.
need to take that time, step back and say, okay, is there something else I can do? And maybe it's implementing AI, or maybe it's something that's already out there that exists. So I do see like there's a lot of new tools that are going to come out there, and it's even probably more important that we take the time to actually think a little bit how it would work.
Right.
And I'll be honest, like I'm not, I'm very much, I can get into the like, nope, just going to get it done and like plow through it. But you do have to
Right.
take a step back, even at the CFO level. Sometimes
Yeah.
especially at the CFO level, you need to think more strategically. But
Yeah.
there's always traps you can fall in of like, I'm just going to get the work done because I got to get it done because I have some deadline or whatever.
Right.
Think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Implement these
Got it.
tools. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. I think, I mean, the capability to looking back and introspecting on what you have done is very important. And I completely agree because you mentioned about Plurilock and, it being a smaller team size and, a lot of things to be done. It's very easy to get swayed by the kind of workload that you are in. There are constant targets, there are constant demands, there are constant things that you need to achieve.
Right.
And I completely see the point, and that's where I think that's where your maturity comes into the picture that, you are doing something, but you're taking a step back to see whether it's actually going ahead, impacting in the right direction, what you anticipated. Otherwise, you just keep executing, and there's no strategy, there's no afterthought, there's no review. So the
Exactly.
execution goes in some other direction. So completely love the answer. Let's move to the last question. And we have viewers seeing the podcast and
Mhm.
hearing the podcast. Would love to know what are your how do you see what would be the your words of advice, or you believe that these are the two three things that they need to implement. And I know during the podcast you have talked about a lot of things, but I would like to know what are the top two three things which you believe that finance professionals can do or can implement in their careers, in their thought process to become a finance leader.
So, yeah, very, very good question. I think absolutely develop what I call your skill stack. It's not my idea. It's many people have used this. The more skills you can add to what you know, the better. So I would say, especially in finance, like do not discount skills of how you negotiate, how you talk to people, how you manage your emotions, how you deal with other people's emotions. Because a lot of times we focus on technical skills, but as you become a leader, you're going to need to manage yourself better, and learning how your emotions work and how you can be implemented, and being able to just choose your actions as opposed to being driven by emotions is something I think that's very key, as well as dealing with other people's emotions, because you're going to deal with all sorts of people, and some of them may not have even the best of intent. So how do you manage yourself to have the steel to do that? So that would be area number one, is building your skills. Area number two is just wherever you are, figure out how to do your job really well, and then ask for more stuff to do. That is going to help you. That is a system to help you actually build more skills.
Got it.
And it's going to show whoever you work for, it's going to do one of two things. It's going to show whoever you work for, hey, this person, they are willing to take on more work. I can trust them. I really like them. I can promote them. That's going to show them that. Or it's going to improve your resume to work for a place that will eventually get you better,
Yeah.
a better role, or more money, or whatever your goal is. So if you're not asking for more, something's wrong. So you need to either figure out, how can I do my job better, faster, higher quality, whatever that means in your role, and then how can I take on more work? Because ultimately, like, you want to be doing your boss's job generally. Like,
Right.
that's a good direction if you don't know where you want to go. How do I take on work to then do stuff that my boss is doing?
Yeah.
That's probably where I'll leave it for those two things. So ask for more and develop your skill stack, and don't ignore your emotional awareness.
Got it. I think emotional awareness is an excellent point. I think handling emotions, managing emotions is very important because there are such external factors, and especially, from a finance perspective, finance teams work with everybody. They work with the sales team, for example, they work with ops team, they work with the tech team, they work with the HR, they work with the CEO, they work with everybody. So I think there's a lot of feedback coming in from multiple, team members, multiple changing scenarios, and there are a lot of things on odd, right? The cash flows are not managed properly, it can impact the future of the company, and then something like COVID happens, it becomes even more imperative. And how do you manage your cash flow? So I think
Right.
managing emotions is very very important. It's a great point. I think emotional management is very important. And the skill stack, I love the answer on the skill stack, because because and it also, and there's also one more additional question also with regards to the skill stack.
Mhm.
I mean, there are tons of skills to be developed, right? I mean, and I believe, in my opinion, also it's important to understand which skills to go ahead with. So, how would you be, suggest, or advise the finance professionals to what skills should they pick up? Is it like a job-driven skill, or is it like a skill that everybody's talking about, or they see outcome-driven skills? How do they decide which skills to pick up?
Well, I would look at, one is figure out what you want to do with your life, or at least what direction you want to go. You can always change your
Right,
answer, but if you want to
right,
be, say, a CFO, right? Like
right,
a lot of people start out and they say, I want to be a CFO. Look
right.
at CFO job descriptions and what skills
Okay, got
they're
it,
asking for there. And then you can say, okay, how do I get each of these skills?
got it.
A lot of times they'll say clear communication. Okay, how do I get clear communication skills? There's probably some hidden things in there that they don't really list. Like, nobody lists, like, I want you to have an emotional intelligence, because it's hard to
Yeah,
define and hard to test for. But that's probably the hidden skills. But even, like, okay, do I need to know how to do a forecast process? Yes. Do I need to know
yeah,
how to be a good business partner? Yes. What does that mean? How do I drill in? And then we can tie it all back. We can say, go to AI and start building a plan. Just ask ChatGPT, like, what's a good plan to get
yeah,
these skills? It'll
yeah,
probably list off, 5 or 6 things to do, and then
right,
start doing it.
right.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it, Scott. Thanks everybody for joining in the podcast. As we draw in towards the end of the 12th episode, we had a great time with Scott. Scott has shared a lot of insights on his journey and how he has, gone about finance transformation. Why did he go ahead and how did he go about it? He shared his brilliant take on the CFO tech stack as well as on the applications of AI in finance. And he's also shared his advice for finance professionals on how to become a CFO, as cool as him. No, but Scott, I had a great time. Thanks for being a part of the podcast and looking
Thank you.
forward to keeping engaging with you.
Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thanks. Thanks.
Bye.